So, a change to council tax collection rules means that households in Wales will now have more time to pay missed bills. Currently missing just 1 month's payment could land you with an entire year's worth of debt. But in Wales, that will change.
Yeah, this is by far, council tax debt collection is by far the most devastating form of debt collection. Within 3 weeks of missing 1 monthly payment, you can be asked to pay for the year. 3 weeks after that, they can send bailiffs to your house to collect for the entire year. It's devastating, it's destructive, it hurts people's mental health, which is why I've been campaigning on this through my Money and Mental Health Policy charity. Earlier this year, we heard from Michael, whose council tax debt ballooned to £6,000 at its worst because he missed a payment while he was in hospital after a motorbike accident. Here's a reminder of how the debt impacted him.
I actually had a demand for the full year's payment whilst I was still in hospital, waiting for a final operation. And then it just escalated and escalated. It was a struggle. It was tough because you feel pressured to pay it. The bailiffs offer no relief, no negotiation, and you just feel trapped.
Yeah, that's Michael. And so Martin took the government to task about this, also in May, and Cabinet Minister Pat McFadden agreed to launch a consultation. Here's what he told us.
The most painful debt in Britain, it's council tax debt.
Unique and aggressive ways that councils pursue those who are in debt.
Do you think that's acceptable, that constituents are treated far worse than customers?
So we're consulting on changing that so that there can be a reasonable period of time over which people can pay their debt.
I'm suddenly sitting there afterwards going, yes, I cannot tell you how many desperate people I have met whose lives have been absolutely ruined by this form of debt collection. Well, look, I mean, it's only a consultation, but I'm hoping that this is the start of changing things.
So, Martin, what's changed?
Yeah, I did have a little cry after that show, to be honest, because it had been a lot of work that we've gone through. So, we need to separate this by UK nation because council tax is a devolved issue. In Wales, there is the new way the rules are going to work in future is instead of the current 21 days that you have, that they can go from saying you've missed your monthly payment, now you have to pay for the year, they're going to move it to 62. So they're going from 3 weeks to 9 weeks. That is a very big improvement. We're calling for it to be 3 months, so it's not as long as I'd like, I need to be honest. And the reason we're going for it to be at least 3 months is that that's what a commercial company would have to wait 3 months before it could escalate and say you had to pay the whole bill. And we don't think it's right that councils are able to do it quicker. They've also reduced the liability charge. Now, this is where when you go to court and you're getting council tax back through court, this is the amount of money that they can add on top of what you owe, and it should be in proportion to the admin costs. In some places, it's up to 150 quid. We think it should be about a fiver. Wales are limiting it to 70 quid. Again, I'm very grateful with what Wales are doing. This is a big improvement. I would like to see it being lower. I also would like to see them mandating that they signpost to debt help when somebody's missing a payment. Instead of pushing, the first thing they do is say, can we send you through to an agency who can help you work through all of this? But Wales is the first one to take concrete steps to actually make something happen. In England, which is what Pat McFadden you heard talking about then, they said on that day they'll launch a consultation. I remember saying to you afterwards, just after they played the film, going, I think I just won. I think we just got a one on that, because it took me time to process it. There's a consultation being done on this. It was set up by Angela Rayner and Jim McMahon, rather, who was the minister. Angela Rayner's no longer in situ. Jim McMahon is no longer the minister. We're being told the consultation has been done, and, of course, my team and I have fed through to that. I now don't know when that consultation will be published, but we've got a government minister coming on the programme later. I've given specific...
From the Treasury.
From the Treasury, and I have given specific notice I'm going to ask that question so that they can't say I'll have to look into that, so that we should get an answer on that. So we'll know if the consultation is coming. Again, what we want to see is them lengthen this time before they make you pay for a year and reduce the liability charge. In Scotland, it works slightly differently. They can charge you a 10% summary fee if you're not paying when you go to court. But we haven't seen any change in Scotland. I know Citizens Advice Scotland are lobbying hard for the Scottish Government to do changes on this, but we've seen silence in Scotland. So Wales are doing something, England are consulting on it, Scotland need to do more on it. Get in touch if you've had this. It affects millions of people. It is the most pernicious form of debt. No commercial company would be able to do anything close to what councils can do. For a commercial company to take you to court for a missed payment of a month, I mean, it'd be taking about a year and they'd have to signpost you to help. And I look at all the people. If you're a local councillor watching this, ask, how does your council collect the debt? I want the government to change the rules, but local councils, you don't have to do it that quickly. Only about 80% of them do it at the maximum speed, but that means others don't. You don't have to. Let's treat, as I used the phrasing before, constituents at least as well as customers of commercial debt companies.
That is the irony, I think, is that people who are struggling to pay bills may fall into the misapprehension that a council will be more forgiving than a commercial company. And it is simply not the case.
I mean, you have to ask, what makes them think that somebody who has missed a monthly payment will be able to afford to pay for the entire year's bill in one go? It doesn't make logical sense. And all of the debt research, Breathing Space scheme was brought in about 7 or 8 years ago. I was involved in the campaign, which is where if you're in, once you get to a crisis debt help, the non-profit debt counselling agencies can pause all your debt activity for 60 days. And the idea of that is people get more time to sort out their finances and they have higher payback once they've sorted out their finances. So councils say, well, we need the money and we have a right to our council taxpayers in order to get the money back in. But this is counterproductive. Actually, if you give people a little bit more time, work with them, signpost them to help, they're more likely to get paid back, the councils, in the long run. All we're doing at the moment is catastrophising people's finances, which in the end can lead to people losing work, having mental health problems, all of which adds to councils' costs. The whole system doesn't make sense and needs changing. That's what we're campaigning to do.
And we've received hundreds of questions about it. Martin has more than 3 million people use his template to make a claim for money that they could be owed. So Martin is answering all of your questions about car finance this morning. But first, you're going to explain the background to this mis-selling scandal.
I am indeed, and it all changed last week, which is why this is so important right now. I'll just nip over here to do my graphics. Right, car finance mis-selling, what do you need to do now? So last week, the regulator, the financial regulator, the FCA, launched a consultation on a mass redress scheme. So effectively, they're going to try and make it really easy for the potentially 14 million mis-sold policies out of around 32 million, and they are due an average of £700 compensation. Now, we're in a consultation period at the moment, but the truth is it has to legally do a consultation. I don't see any large-scale changes coming in on the back of that consultation unless there were to be a legal challenge from the car finance firms. This is all likely to start in early 2026, so February, March, April. It's for cars, motorbikes or camper vans bought on PCP or HP car finance from April 2007 to November 2024. Some of you will be saying, hold on, I thought it stopped in 2021. As I'm about to show you, there are more mis-selling categories. One of them stopped in 2021. The rest can be more recent. So, there are 3 ways you may have been mis-sold under this redress scheme by the regulator. You could, of course, go to court if you want to be more militant, but this is under the easy system the regulator's trying to set up. The first one is the one we've been talking about a long time, discretionary commission arrangements. The key word being discretionary, DCAs. This is 11.4 million agreements. Here, when you went to buy a car, the interest rate could be increased in order to give the dealer or broker more commission. You were not told. You paid more interest than you needed to without realising. The next mis-selling, contractual ties. This is where they didn't tell you that they were only operating through one lender, or one lender had a first dibs on customers, and there's some cases where people were told, hey, we'll go to our panel of lenders to find you the best deal. But no, they only went to one lender. 3.2 million agreements there. And finally, unfairly high commission. So if it wasn't disclosed to you and your commission was 35% or more of the total cost of the credit, and over 10% of the loan cost, that is deemed as mis-selling. Now, the most important thing you need to understand is all of these, to be mis-selling, involve inadequate disclosure, and you were very rarely told. The problem with that means, if you're thinking, did this happen to me? You have no way of knowing. You won't know you were missold because it's the fact you weren't told about it that was what makes it being missold. So the only way you're going to find out is by checking. That's the most important point, and that is part of the complaints procedure. Whether you need to do that or not depends on the situation we're in. We've got loads of questions on that, so I'll jump over the desk and I'll get on with answering them.
Let's start with Jen and Paula on Facebook. Some success, to be fair. Jen they both filled out the online template.
Good.
Jen successfully heard back from 4 out of 5 of her claims, and Paula got a successful reply in 2 days. But what do they have to do now?
So, if you know that you had a discretionary commission arrangement, because that's the one the templates were about, then when the redress scheme is launched, you will be sent a letter telling you if you're due compensation, and then you don't have to do anything. It will be paid unless you choose to opt out. So that's nothing. For those where you have made a complaint but didn't have a discretionary commission arrangement, if we just put that second page up there, the regulator still says firms have to consider all those 3, is it up? All those 3 different forms of mis-selling. So even if you only said, have I got a DCA, it'll still have to look at the other 2 types. But if you had one of the other 2 types, and that's how you were missold, then they'll write a letter to you and you will need to opt in and say, yes, I would like to be considered for a payment. So if your complaint was for the right reason, it's an opt-out system. If your complaint wasn't for the right reason, but they found you were missold anyway, it's an opt-in system.
Denise on Facebook says she's not done anything yet. She's had 2 cars on PCP during that time frame. Where should she start?
Let me split this into 2 answers. First, the official answer. The official answer is the whole point of a mass redress scheme is if this is set up, as it's very likely to be early next year, companies will have to try and identify everybody who has missold and contact them proactively without you doing anything. Then you'll be sent a letter saying, you were missold, this is how much you're getting, and you can opt into that. So the big picture, and why I'm supporting the scheme, is millions of people are going to get this without doing anything. But what would I do? There is a risk on older cases that they don't have the documentation that you do. There's a risk that you've moved house or have a different address. There's a risk that you've got married, for example, and changed your name. For all of those reasons, I would prefer to be in the group who have complained and have to opt out of a payment rather than they have to try and find you and opt in. Okay. Now, at the moment, there aren't templates available anywhere that are going to cover all 3 cases. If I can be, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Mine will be ready in a month because we have to add more firms because it's a bigger thing and we have to rewrite it and get it legally checked. That is, it should be in plenty of time because as long as you do make the complaint before the redress scheme starts, you will be ready. So you could go and do a DIY complaint yourself now, or you can wait until the free tools are available. Mine in a month, I'm sure other people will do them too, and then you'll put a complaint in. But I would prefer to be in the group who complain than who haven't. But if you don't do anything, then hopefully if you were missold, you might still get it through.
OK, Becky on Facebook says she's had 5 agreements in that time. She wants to know, will she be entitled to £700 for each of the 5?
So each agreement would be separate. Yes, you would get a payout. The £700 is an average figure. The way it works, this is going to, if you don't understand this, don't worry, is they're going to take 17% of the commission, which they believe is the market distortion cost, 17% of the interest, and all of the commission, add the 2 up, divide it by 2 so you get an average between them, and that will mean most people are getting about 2/3 of the commission that went to the dealer, which will average £700. But if you had a longer debt and a bigger debt, then yours would be more. If you're in a shorter loan and a smaller amount, yours will be less.
And just finally, Martin on X says, what if I've already signed up to a claims company? And I've seen a lot of adverts.
That's very difficult because you've got a contract with them and they're not going to be doing very much. You don't need to do very much. So the first thing is you could look and see what your cancellation clause is. If it means you've got to pay now, I wouldn't do it. And secondly, the regulator is looking at this and saying firms should not charge for work they haven't done. 30% fee if they're not doing any work is a lot. That's another one my team and I are focused on over the next month to dive into the legals on this, and I'll be doing more. This has all happened last week. We're still going through the 360-page consultation.